around us, there are people with extraordinary stories to tell. Caught up in the biggest events in living memory, they found amongst the chaos and devastation acts of humanity
It was just like an angel from heaven.
that changed their lives forever.
I don't know her name, don't know what she looks like, but she's someone I value so much. So I want to say thank you.
Now we're searching for those people,
Your woman is somewhere around here.
digging through the archives,
Oh my God.
unearthing vital clues
You found him.
to bring them together once again. This week, a veteran of the Falklands War, hoping to find the fellow crewmen who survived the sinking of their ship.
It is very important that anybody that's been through something like this talks about it.
After you.
I'm there.
And the man whose family migrated to 1960s Britain, searching for the school teachers who welcomed and inspired him.
Those 3 teachers saved me.
Hi, my name's David. I'm a veteran of the Falklands conflict. I was aboard the SS Atlantic Conveyor when it was struck by 2 Argentine missiles, and I'd like to find some of the guys that I was serving with at that time.
In April 1982, Britain went to war with Argentina over a small group of islands we call the Falklands. Suddenly, the armed forces were making the 8,000-mile journey to fight. And among them was 20-year-old David.
The latest casualties with the sinking of the Atlantic Conveyor bring the total number of British dead to 100.
We were a close-knit unit, and that closeness allowed us to overcome the adversity. Every person's experience of a conflict like that, unless you were there with them, you just don't understand. I think it has affected me quite a lot, because initially I didn't really talk about it, and that's tough. So that's me at probably about 17 years and 3 months.
Oh, gorgeous. Look at that.
The smile on my face tells you that I was enjoying my time there.
If you were Indian, that'd be your arranged marriage photo.
I grew up in Stevenage, a working class family. I think I was probably a bit mischievous, into my rock music, big football fan, big Tottenham fan. I think I needed a bit of discipline at that time. So the forces was a good option. My father was in the army during the Second World War. He said the world was a big place and Stevenage wasn't the world. And the fact that the Navy would pay me to go and travel the 7 seas seemed a good idea at the time.
Be a sailor in today's Navy. It's a great life and the pay is good. Find out more. Cut out the coupon in your newspaper.
What was the plan for you?
The plan was whatever the Navy had in mind for me.
Marching on!
I spent a couple of years training.
What's hitting your shoulder?
You turn up as a jigsaw puzzle, and they dismantle that puzzle, and then they put that jigsaw puzzle back together in the fit that they want. The one thing I do remember about it was all the different accents. You bond very quickly. And then in 1981, I was fortunate to move to 845 Squadron. We were quite a tight-knit group. I was part of the mechanics crew, making sure all the aircraft was serviced, and we were just about to go on a tour of duty in Northern Ireland at the time. That's actually me there.
There!
Yeah.
This guy just took it.
I'm just behind fellow mechanics. This is Spike, who was also a mechanic. There was Jan. If he liked something, he would say, "That's smart as 10, that." You know, silly little things like that. This is Andy Parkinson.
Big grin on his face.
Yeah. I always remember Andy as having a smile on his face and nothing really fazed him.
Yeah, you can see that.
We just gelled, you know, everyone got on together. But we didn't make it to Northern Ireland. We were called to a briefing and told Argentina was looking to invade the Falkland Islands, and so we were on 72-hour standby.
Did you even know where the Falkland Islands were at that time?
I thought the Falkland Islands were probably a group of islands off the coast of Scotland.
The government says the dispute with Argentina over the Falkland Islands is potentially dangerous.
The Falkland Islands were discovered by Britain in 1592. The islanders want to stay the way they are, loyal to a country most of them have never even visited.
What did you do in those 72 hours?
We were told that if we could get home and back within 8 hours, then it might be something that we choose to do. I got into my car and drove home to my parents' house. You know, he said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I've just left some bits and pieces."
Did you not tell them?
I couldn't. We were sworn to secrecy. But my dad followed me out to the car and he asked me what was going on. And I said to him, "I can't tell you, Dad, but something may appear in the news in the near future. And if it does, you'll know where I am. Just tell Mum not to worry." And he patted me on the back and said, "Take care, son." And off I went.
David's squadron quickly set off for the Falklands after the Argentinians invaded.
The Argentine invaders tighten their grip on the Falklands, the inhabitants confined to their homes, all radios confiscated.
These crowds were shouting for their soldiers to kill British troops.
The difficulties we face are formidable, but our determination to secure a just solution is relentless. And in that, I believe we have the whole country with us.
I think the general consensus of opinion was that we would show such a strength of force that it would be foolish for them to hang around.
I think the Argentinians will quake in their shoes.
I felt very proud to see our lads go to sea, protect our land.
Because you're with your friends, your comrades, it was an adventure for us. Here is an opportunity presenting itself for us to go and make a difference.
Were we ready to go to war?
Britain was ready to go to war, but not that war. The big story in kind of military terms in that period is the Cold War, and the British Armed Forces are configured to fight Russians. That's the war that everyone's frightened about. And then suddenly this bizarre conflict erupts on the other side of the world. So they have to reconfigure themselves very, very quickly.
So it doesn't sound like we were prepared at all for something like this.
No, not at all. If you read the newspaper headlines, there's a kind of jingoistic contempt for Argentina. But the Argentinian military have been equipped by the Americans for some years. They've been modernising, and they have the Exocet ship-killing missile, which is a missile that can be fired from over the horizon. And that's the key threat to RN ships. So this is the febrile environment that the Royal Navy is steaming into.
The Argentinian cruiser, General Belgrano, was hit by torpedoes fired from a British submarine.
I remember it was on the radio that the Belgrano had been hit. There was no cheer, no celebration. There was a realisation that there would be a price to pay for that.
Shortly after the British sank the General Belgrano, Argentina retaliated.
A column of smoke on the horizon showed where HMS Sheffield, one of the Navy's most modern destroyers, was hit by an Exocet.
We could see the Sheffield on the horizon smoking.
Helicopters rushed survivors to the carriers.
And it was at that point that you realised that the conflict was very, very real. Because if it can happen to them, it can happen to you. But you've got those private thoughts, you possibly keep them to yourself.
As fighting intensified, David and his squadron were transferred onto a requisitioned container ship, the SS Atlantic Conveyor. They were tasked to disembark on the Falklands to supply aircraft and other vital supplies to the ground forces.
The Conveyor was a big ship. It was quite visible because it was painted navy blue with a white superstructure. And I can remember thinking it would stand out more against the backdrop of the ocean than a warship.
This is the actual ship. This is Atlantic Conveyor.
God, look at the size of that.
And the Conveyor is very simple. She's a container ship.
So not a warship.
She's not a warship. And in less than 2 weeks, they turn her into not just a store ship, but an aircraft transport filled with munitions and all the other stuff she's got to carry down.
Yeah.
But container ships are phenomenally vulnerable, and they don't fit any defensive armaments to her.
So this ship, which is a cargo ship, has got nothing to protect her?
No, absolutely nothing.
I remember the 25th of May, Andy Parkinson and I, we detailed to go off to make sure that everything below decks are securely stowed. I remember having the conversation with Andy and saying, you wouldn't want to be down here if the missile hit, would you? And we laughed about it. And you wouldn't want to be down there if the missile hit. Later that day, I'd been doing some work, finished my after-flight inspection. I got my dinner, roast dinner, chocolate sponge and white custard for my afters, sat down, and then there was a huge thud. The fluorescent light tube that was on the ceiling dropped down on the table in front of me, and my first thought was that my gravy had gone into my custard. And I thought, how am I going to eat that now? But that's when the second missile came in. It was like a disaster movie. You could hear the explosions happening below deck, but in a movie you don't taste it. We tried to make our way along the gangway to try and assist anybody that we could. But the smoke was billowing, so you had to get very low to try and get under the smoke. But now the heat on the deck was so intense, you couldn't put your hands down. We made our way as far as we could, and we just couldn't see anything. And if you can't see anything, you can't be of assistance to anybody. But you could hear people calling for your help. And that's tough. It's tough having to make the decision to go back and preserve what you can, knowing that there are people that need your help and you can't possibly reach them. It was a very short space of time to when the order was taken to abandon ship. I remember Don Price from our squadron being at the top of the ladder, and he went, and then I went over, and as I went, the next person that was coming over was treading on my hands. So as soon as they stepped off, I just fell backwards into the water. It was so dark. I can't explain the blackness and the cold. I really felt that my time was up. I was lucky because the life expectancy in the water at that time was just a couple of minutes, I think. My strength was almost gone, but I had to swim to the life raft. And as soon as I got there, Jim reached over and dragged me into the life raft. There were 12 members of crew on Conveyor that didn't make it. 2 of those guys were off of our squadron, Adrian Anslow and Don Price, both friends of mine. The ship was completely consumed by fire and she sunk shortly afterwards.
It's just a photograph and it's terrifying.
This was on our way home. In itself, that's a traumatic photograph because there's people that are missing from that photograph that should be on it.
Every single one of these young men has just been scarred by that experience.
Yeah.
Just makes you wonder, well, really what's going on behind the smiles. Why is it important for you personally that you can reach out to these guys and then talk about what you experienced and what you went through?
But it is very important that anybody that's been through something like this talks about it, finds somebody to talk to about it.
It's been almost 40 years since the Falklands, and David has had a really tough time coming to terms with the experience he went through. I can fully understand why he wants to find the men that he was on that ship with. I think he wants to make sure they're okay, because he knows that talking about it has helped him. All I've got at the moment are 4 names. 1 full name, Andy Parkinson, 1 first name, Jim, and 2 nicknames, Jan and Spike. That's all I've got to go on. Let's see what we can find. So this is the official record for 845 Squadron. This is it. Atlantic Conveyor was hit by 2 Exocet missiles. The ensuing fire soon overwhelmed the ship, and the order to abandon was given 1 hour after the strike. It's just a tiny paragraph, but the personal experience is vastly different. Here we go. So this is a list of 845 Squadron. The names of the guys who died, Don and Adrian, and all the survivors as well. We have their names and their official numbers. There he is, there's David. And then we've got Andy Parkinson. Here we go. P. Holborn, who I think was called Jan. So I've now got the full names of all the men. It's a starting point.